So just to go ahead and set the stage for the background commentary of this video, I am a Texans fan, and if you've watched one of my videos before, you know this. If you haven't, now you know. Um, Evaluating CJ Stroud's performance in his first preseason game, his first action going against a live defense in a game setting, it's not what you want to see. 2 for 4, 13 yards with an interception. But what you did want to see out of him is an ability to get out of the pocket, an ability to understand that there were things wrong with the offensive line in front of him, and that's something that I'm going to touch on a little bit later. But, you know, I think a lot of people are going to see, a lot of Texans fans are going to see Davis Mills go, I believe, 9 for 13, 99 yards. He had the touchdown to Tank Dell that could have gone either way on the ruling, whether you want to say it was a catch or not. But at the end of the day, no matter how Davis Mills performed throughout this preseason, and especially during this game against a tough New England Patriots, Bill Belichick-led defense, either way, Davis Mills could have thrown for 300 yards in one quarter. There's no reason for him to ever start one of these games coming up in this 17-game regular season. There's no reason to believe that CJ Stroud not only will perform better than Davis Mills, but is going to perform better than Davis Mills going forward. There's a couple things wrong with what D'Amico Ryans put in front of CJ Stroud during this first preseason game. Let's just start with the fact of, what I touched on a little bit ago. This is a Bill Belichick-led New England Patriots defense, a defense last year who was used to having to outperform their offense. And a defense that, like I said, it's a Bill Belichick-led defense. It's going to perform very, very well. It's going to have guys knowing what they are supposed to do. And in a rookie quarterback's first preseason game, where they're going to get their first, steps as to seeing what an actual blitz looks like, what a pass rush looks like, what it looks like when you have guys actually trying to go after you and hit you. This is CJ Stroud's first time in the NFL having guys on the other side trying to hit him. This isn't like practice where where your teammates are not going to even touch you. And this is the thing too, like CJ Stroud went against some decent defenses in his time at Ohio State, namely the Georgia defense. Georgia's defense holds nothing close to a Bill Belichick-led defense in New England. There's nothing close to what New England does and what New England wants you to think they're doing and what they're going to end up doing based off what they already want you to think they're like. There's nothing that can come close to Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots defense. So I think you combine that with the fact that the Texans send out the number 2 string offensive line that includes names like George Fant, which is one of the worst tackles, I think, in my lifetime of watching football. George Fant of New York Jets, of Seattle Seahawk, of, I want to say fame, but it's more fame for being known as one of the worst offensive linemen of the last decade. The offensive line was terrible. The offensive line, as much as CJ Stroud needs to know that he's going against Bill Belichick, the offensive line needed to know that they were going against a Bill Belichick defensive line, a defensive line that included guys like Anthony Jennings and Keon White, who were doing nothing but get 6 to 7 yards in the backfield on all 5 or 6 passing plays that CJ Stroud had. He had 2 plays where he was able to do a nice spin, a backwards, spin to his left, and get out of pressure. One of those like Russell Wilson type spin moves that he was really good at using for majority of his time in Seattle. That was like my favorite play that I saw of CJ Stroud, was be able to get out of the pocket like that. I can't say that CJ Stroud looked uncomfortable with what he was doing. I think he was just slow. And I don't even want to say slow in a bad sense. I just want to say slow as in a sense of he hasn't been in that position before. And a couple things to just go forward with. I don't want to see CJ Stroud behind the second string offensive line again. I don't want to see CJ Stroud with a wide receiver core that doesn't include Tank Dell. I don't think Tank Dell and CJ Stroud played a single down together tonight. Now, there were only 2 drives for the Houston Texans, but again, I don't want to see another play, another drive, really. I mean, there can be plays without the 2 of them on the field, obviously. But I don't want to see another drive where Tank Dell doesn't see the field while CJ Stroud is on the field in these preseason games. Going forward, CJ Stroud should be nothing but the number 1 quarterback for this team, and there's nothing from this preseason game that can change that. There's nothing from these next 2 preseason games that can change that, unless CJ Stroud gets hurt, which goes back to my previous point. Why are we playing the second string offensive line? I get it that Titus Howard just got injured, but and, you're not going to play Laramie Tunsil. You pay him too much to play him. But the offensive line that was out there, they might as well have been replacement players with how poorly they played in front of CJ Stroud. That was absolutely terrible. That's one of the worst performances I think I've ever seen from an offensive line in 2 drives. Again, this is a Bill Belichick-led defense that's going to make a lot of people look bad, but it's really, really bad when you consider this was New England's first game too. They didn't know how bad the Texans' offensive line was going to be. They didn't know how slow CJ Stroud was going to be. They probably could have expected it, seeing as he's a rookie quarterback making his first preseason start. But at the same time, there was nothing for New England to go off of because CJ Stroud had never played before. There was nothing for New England to go off of because they hadn't seen this offensive line together before. And to put that performance out there on tape and to put that performance out there as a baseline, it's really, really bad for the offense. Now, here's what I really love, and Will Anderson is not going to get any shine from this game because I don't even know if he had a tackle in this game. I'm going to try to find it while I talk to you here. But the defense today, oh my goodness. The defense today in the first half led up 3 points to New England. And that was a New England team that was basically playing the same guys. Now, it wasn't the number 1s for this team, obviously. It wasn't the first string players. It wasn't Mac Jones. It wasn't any other running backs that are probably going to be used, other than a little bit of Tyquan Thornton being thrown in there. There's nobody on that offense that was really the ones for New England. So I do want to be careful with what I say about the Houston Texans, but, they had high energy. They had players running around doing things. And that's just something, if you're a Texans fan of lately, you don't see that very often. Up until last year, you really didn't see this defense, playing hard, play after play after play. You just didn't see it. And based on what was happening towards the end of the year last year, this was a Houston Texans defense pass defense-wise, was one of the top 10, I think, or maybe even top half of the league pass defenses throughout the entire year. And especially towards the end of the year, they were even better. To allow 3 points to the preseason ones with Bailey Zappi at quarterback, a guy who last year was leading a team to 33.5 points per game in the 2 games that he played last year. Everything I think went well for this Houston Texans team up to the point where CJ Stroud should be able to look at what happened to the defense after he threw that interception. It should give him more confidence than anything, because that proved that if he does make a mistake, there is still 11 other professional football players on your team's other side of the ball. And they have a job too. And that job was to allow as few points as possible. And they did exactly that. You'd even say, you have 10 more yards for the Texans on that drive before you throw that interception. They probably don't even get 3 points on that drive. And just looking at what the Texans have done this whole game, they've only allowed those 3 points. They've pitched a shutout defensively. So I think in total for the Texans today, you just have to kind of look at yourself and say, okay, what's the point of putting CJ Stroud behind an offensive line that we know can't block? We have to know that 5-man group that was in there for CJ Stroud, they can't do the job. They can't. That should be the first thing that is taken from this game. And then next is, guys on this team played well. Devin Singletary had some really nice runs. Mike Boone came in and did some good things. Daria Gumbawale fumbled, and I'm pretty sure Daria Gumbawale was a, I want to say Agumbawale was a fullback before he came to Houston. At least in his time with other teams, he was a fullback. I don't think we should be running pitch. I don't think we should be running pitch plays to Daria Gumbawale going forward. But other than that, I loved everything that I saw from this game. There's still 4 minutes left, and Houston's winning 20-3 in New England, which is a tough part of this too. Yeah, I loved it. I love that we start the season with a win. I love that we start the season on a high note. Even with CJ Stroud having half as many interceptions as completions, I think this was a really good game for Houston.